I also want to give thanks to and for a number of other folks. First, I want to thank the great law firm, my law firm, Adams & Reese. And I joined Adams & Reese about 11 years ago. And that was when a number of us opened the firm's Memphis office right after we closed down, the only other firm I ever practiced with. That was a little stressful, of course, but I've never regretted that decision for a moment. Many of you know that I believe very deeply that practicing law is both a profession and a business, and that those two are not at war with one another. In an era of tremendous and rapid change in our business, in the law business, what I actually love about the firm is that Adams & Reese believes that too. As a firm, we're committed to the highest professional standards and ideals, being the best lawyers we can for our client, honoring our pro bono obligation, being an active part of our communities and the bar. But as a firm, we're also firmly committed to running a successful business, and we're not ashamed to say it. This afternoon, though, I'm most grateful for my partners' unflagging support of my bar association habit. In fact, even before I joined the firm 11 years ago, when I was talking with the firm about joining up that spring of 2006, since then to this day, my partners have been utterly and completely supportive of my bar habit and of my plans to run for TBA president. Frankly, I'm not sure it's entirely rational. I'm not sure that I completely understand it, but I love it. I'm very, very grateful for it. Of course, my managing partner does tell me that my partners do eventually want me to start practicing law again, but we'll see how that all works out. As indebted as I am to Adams & Reese and my current partners, I can't move on without thanking another law firm now gone. For 20 years, I practiced with Armstrong Allen, a storied Tennessee law firm with those of us who remained, those of us who remained there were partners in 2006. That's when we dissolved the firm. Strange as it may seem to be publicly thanking a dead law firm, you need to understand that I wouldn't be before you here today without Armstrong Allen and its lawyers. It's where I learned to be a lawyer. It was a sad day when we closed the firm. More importantly, though, for today's purposes, there was no law firm in Tennessee history that was ever more committed to community and public service than Armstrong Allen. Armstrong Allen had within its members a former ABA president, several former Memphis Bar presidents, and at least 7 of my 132 predecessors as TBA president were once partners in Armstrong Allen. They enabled and supported my bar association habit, and I'm grateful. But even more important than my law firm and that dead law firm, I stand before you today because I have today and have had for a long time, perhaps, may I say how long? 40 years, almost 40 years, the unwavering love and support of Jane Van Daren, my wife, right here in the front. Jane was my high school sweetheart. She is the love of my life. She is the mother of our 2 sons. And as former ABA President Sandy D'Alembert once put it, the woman who allowed me to keep my maiden name. So, it's true, it's true. So here, in front of all these witnesses, thank you. Now, I mentioned up front that in thinking about today, I kept coming back to the word change. Of course, the biggest change here at the TBA that we're currently facing is the change at the helm of the TBA, the retirement of our longtime executive director and the arrival of his successor. Jason's already spoken about our outgoing executive director, but I'm sorry, I need to add a few words. As a devoted bar junkie, I've worked with executive directors in a number of bar associations. I've known and worked closely with some truly great ones. In fact, I've been around the TBA long enough so that I was actually on the TBA executive committee back when our now retiring executive director was hired. In my opinion, there has been no finer executive director of any bar association anywhere in this country than Alan Ramser. Now, there are lots of reasons that our association is in fine shape today. There are lots of reasons our membership is strong and grew through the Great Recession, right through it, that our finance is strong and that our revenues, including dues revenues, grew right through the recession, that our CLE is the gold standard for lawyer learning in Tennessee and elsewhere, that we swapped out a decrepit old mansion, I don't know how many of you remember this, on West End for a nice, lovely, functional, and historic building in downtown Nashville, that for decades, TBA law reform proposals have so often met with approval on Capitol Hill and in the Supreme Court, that our staff is just so marvelous, okay? There are lots of reasons. As they say, victory has 100 fathers. But there's one very strong reason, one common factor that contributed mightily to each and every one of those successes for almost 2 decades. That's Alan Ramser. And once more, let's thank Alan Ramser, please. Now, I know we're all going to enjoy getting to know our new executive director, Joycelyn Stevenson, in the coming months and years. For those of you who've not yet met her, and it's hard for me to imagine anybody in this room has not yet met her, having been at this meeting for a couple of days. I want you to know she's just completely energized by the new opportunities and challenges ahead of her. And I know that this change in leadership is going to be smooth and productive and exciting. It has been so far, and I fully expect it will be. I also commit to you personally, as I have to the board, that my own personal #1 priority, my presidential initiative or whatever, for this coming year, #1 with a bullet, right, is to do everything I possibly can to help Joycelyn be successful. Now, that's not to say, however, that the TBA won't also be busy with some new, shall we say, substantive challenges over the next year. Let me point to just 2. You know, it's hard to forecast exactly what issues will be the most important the TBA will face in a given year. But the consideration by our Supreme Court and the General Assembly of the recommendations issued in April by the Indigent Representation Task Force, the one chaired by former Justice and now Dean Bill Koch, that's the most important issue on our collective immediate horizon. I don't think there's any doubt about this. Our House of Delegates just considered and voted unanimously, as I recall, to broadly support the report on Wednesday. The board's scheduled to have its first substantive discussion about this tomorrow. Still, none of this is new to us. It's been TBA policy for as long as anyone can remember to strongly support the best possible, most robustly funded indigent defense. That's still TBA policy. Now, in my opinion, personally, we haven't got board action quite yet, but I'm not going too far out on a limb to say that, in my opinion, it's a terribly well-done report. It presents our Supreme Court and our General Assembly with what I think is a once-in-a-generation opportunity to move Tennessee from, real frankly, a less than enviable position on indigent defense and indigent representation to a position of national leadership. And that's both on structure and funding. Funding's important, but structure and funding of indigent defense. I hope and expect that the TBA leadership is going to be tasked to work arm in arm with our court and the task force to forcefully advocate for those recommendations. One more thing on this subject. Assuming the board joins the House, as I hope they will, in authorizing us to take a strong position on these issues, everybody here today, let me say that again, everybody here today needs to prepare and be ready to be called on by the TBA to help on this issue. You're going to be called on to make the best possible case to the legislature on these issues. Nobody in Tennessee knows any better than the lawyers of Tennessee of the importance of indigent defense to Tennessee's least privileged citizens, and our elected representatives will need to hear from you. So be ready, because we will call on you, and we need you to work together with us, okay? One last topic related to change. During the coming year, I also plan to carry forward the work started by former President Bill Harbison and Jason Long of the Evolving Legal Markets Committee. For almost 2 years, former President Gail Ashworth has chaired this remarkable group of Tennessee lawyers who've been trying to come to grips for us with many changes, all the changes facing us as a profession and as a business, as the business of law. And it's about not just what we do as lawyers, it's about the whole market for the delivery of legal services. In case you've been living under a rock, that market, our market, is changing rapidly in ways that not even the most insightful observers can reliably predict. The market is growing, for example. Lawyers are experimenting with new business models. New entrants to the market for legal services are, in fact, today effectively competing with law firms and lawyers. The amount of new money, investment money from hedge funds, private equity funds, that is backing some of these ventures is truly staggering. It's no secret that what's at the root of these changes is basically technology and what you might call, some call globalization, if you like. The technology that we and our clients use every day has revolutionized not just how we communicate, but the actual way that people and businesses work, which means that even our smallest business clients can and do have suppliers or customers down the block, but also in China. And our individual clients are more mobile than ever. Their legal needs are also changing before our eyes. And those are driving changes in the way we practice law. Not to mention that some of the new entrants into the legal services market have aimed their business plans directly at parts of the consumer and small business legal services market that are clearly not well served today by us, by traditional law practice and business models. In my view, the biggest challenge for us as lawyers practicing in these times of great change is how little we know. Now, our market is really, really opaque. If you're with a big law firm, maybe you know a little about your market from the American Lawyer and National Law Journal statistics, but anybody who's looked at those understands that they only scrape the surface of the economics of what the law business is about for those firms. They don't even mention Axiom and Counsel on Call, a Tennessee company many of you know about. Then they're really part of the same market. They're not even mentioned. And for solos and small firms, a far bigger market after all, information about how that market for legal services is doing or changing is even harder to come by. One digression here for our judicial brothers and sisters in the room, especially for those of you on the civil side. Lest you think that you're immune from market forces, I want you to engage with me in a thought experiment for a moment. So for a moment, consider our civil courts not as a government service like fire and police services today, a service that's always and only provided by the government, one that's supported by public funding, tax money, fees established by the legislature. Consider for a moment the possibility that you are, as a judge in our civil courts in Tennessee, actually a provider of dispute resolution services competing in a marketplace that serves consumers of those services. And as you consider that possibility, Google the word Modria, M-O-D-R-I-A, okay? Seriously, now, later, Google it. Modria is a company that spun out of the dispute resolution processes of PayPal and eBay. Two facts. First, Modria processes 60 million cases online every year, resolving about 90% of them with no human input on the company's side, meaning only the disputants are involved, okay? Second, Modria is already working for the Nashville Property Assessor and others in this country, and using an online platform to power the dispute resolution process for property tax appraisals. Now, I submit to you, our robed brothers and sisters, that even though Modria made its bones with low-dollar consumer transactions, they are actively working to expand their market. In one of the early sessions of the Evolving Legal Markets Committee, the CEO of that company, a very engaging guy named Colin Rule, spoke to the committee. And he discussed, among other things, their work on a consumer-friendly online platform for divorce in the Netherlands, okay? One that, as I recall, was mostly lawyerless, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not evangelizing that these changes in the market are either good or bad. They could be both good and bad, or they could be all good or all bad. In fact, by this point, by the way, Jane, the love of my life, is probably pointing out to the other folks at her table that at home I am not exactly what one might call a change agent. Fair enough? Yes. She would probably have mentioned by now, although Claudia knows this, that I drive a 15-year-old Honda, and Jane has had to force me to throw out ties older than our 20-something children. And by the way, let me point out, let's read it out. That Accord is in damn fine shape, and there's nothing going to happen. I'm keeping the Accord. In any event, the premise of our Evolving Legal Markets Committee's work has been, and it's going to continue to be this year, that the market for legal services, including the many parts of the market that our members are part of, it is in the midst of the largest, most significant and sweeping changes that the business of law has seen in more than 100 years. Okay? Our committee will continue to do two things. First of all, they're going to continue to investigate exactly what's happening that directly and indirectly affects Tennessee lawyers. And second, they're going to educate and spread the word to Tennessee lawyers about what they find, specifically about how Tennessee lawyers can react to these changes in a way that honors both our work, our role as professionals, and as business people. I'm confident next year at this time we'll be able to look back and see some very interesting and productive results from that committee, from the Evolving Legal Markets Committee. I also hope we'll be reporting to you on epic positive changes in indigent representation in Tennessee. And I know we're going to be able to report to you on our new executive director's very successful first year. So with that, please wish me luck. Be ready to help when the call goes out. And thank you for the opportunity to serve. And we are adjourned. Thank you very much.